Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope, real inspiration. For real. And today, I'm talking with Corey Koskie. He is not a stranger to sports fans out there. He's played for the Minnesota Twins, the Blue Jays, the Brewers, and now he has a whole different kind of life, which brings the passion from the past into the present. Corey, thanks for being with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, let's go back in time a bit. It's been now 10 years since you retired from baseball. What are some of the things about that past life of yours that you still draw on today?
Gosh, basically how you deal with failure. Because it was, failure was a big part of the game of baseball, especially. So dealing with the adversity, kind of going through the ups and downs of that. And then just kind of that, continue to move forward after you get knocked down, getting back up and going back forward. That's one aspect. And then the tenacity and resilience through that. Because, listen, at the end of the day, I came from Manola, Manitoba, in which I didn't start playing baseball till I was really serious baseball till I was 19 years old. And just the willingness to learn and be open to learning. And then through that, kind of developing the resilience through that, and develop the resilience through the failure. But then the tenacity continue to go that, so that I was able to take that into my Planet Fitnesses, in which I was a really terrible running my Planet.
So you ran some franchises for a while.
I bought into franchises, and then just learning that whole process, and then now kind of going on to Linklead, starting something else that's completely new out of my comfort zone.
Let's talk about Linklead. You're really focused on families and children.
Yeah.
What is it? How would you define Linklead for people who don't know it? Linklead.com, they can find it.
So basically, Linklead, the goal is to connect youth sports for good. And how are we going to connect youth sports for good? Well, right now, I'm focused on stories and using our stories to help inspire, encourage, and mentor the next generation of kids, and to help the parents as they navigate through their world of youth sports. Because the most difficult thing for parents as they're going through it is they're dealing with the first time their kid gets cut, the first time they deal with a bully coach, the first time they deal with, teammates, a tough locker room, or whatever that dynamic is. And, the parents, do they have the skills to really deal with that? Some do, some don't. But everything that usually kids have felt with or through at some point, somebody else has dealt with that. Millions of other people have dealt with that. And the same thing with parents. Millions of people have dealt with, kids being bad, have dealt with kids being called names. And, we've all dealt with stuff. So how do we learn from other people's experiences?
Corey, you hear about those soccer moms and hockey dads and, baseball parents, and they have that bad connotation. What's something that you say to kids to help them maybe set things straight with their parents?
So basically what I do is, another reason I started Linklead, and the format I have in it is, there's people telling their stories, what they learned from it, and how they apply it to life. Because we're filled with an abundance of experts now. Everybody's an expert telling us what we need to think, what we need to believe, and what we need to do. And you go to any event right now, or you see any sort of seminar, they always lead on all the acronyms behind their name and all the letters behind their name, because basically saying, hey, look, I know what I'm talking about. And so they present themselves, and then they tell you what you need to think, what you need to believe, and how you need to do it. Where that's great in theory, but the application of those theories are really difficult. And the best way, I believe, to learn is through other people's experiences and somebody who's actually dealt with what you're going through. And because there's failures and there's successes in that. So how do we deal with that? And that's why I'm doing the stories. Is so, hey, here's my story, here's what I learned, and here's how I try to apply it. And now you do what you want with the story.
Part of your story, Corey Koskie, is that you did have concussion-related injuries, some PTSD after your career that you were dealing with also. How did that part of your life change you as a person? Did it change you as a person?
Yeah, so dealing with the concussion, Dr. Mickey Collins told me, he goes, and this is going back 15 years, is when we knew really very little about concussion, and the University of Pittsburgh was on the leading edge, the cutting edge of all the concussion stuff. And Mickey told me, he goes, Corey, he goes, the weirdest thing happens with a lot of my people who dealt with a concussion for a while is they go look back and say, this is the best thing that's ever happened for me in my life. Didn't make much sense for me at that time, but as I look back, it was probably one of the best things that happened for me, because it forced me to deal with some stuff. In one of my podcasts, I learned from Rob Stauber, he talks, what you resist persists. And so if you resist it, it's going to persist. And so there's a lot of stuff that I was resisting through my career on how to deal with stuff. And the way I was dealing with it was through activity, and I had to learn how to be present and be okay being by myself, being okay not doing something, because I've dealt with anxiety through my career, and dealt with some serious anxiety and depression. I dealt with pretty much every mental illness in my concussion as I'm kind of coming back from that, but I had to learn how to be okay with myself, because I wasn't able to go on the computer, just be mentally active at all.
With Real Leaders, we want people to also understand that you had some of the highest of highs, but you also experienced some of the lowest of lows, but you're here today, still standing. You didn't let it get you down. What are some of those lessons that you learned in those depths that you try to bring to people today?
I don't know how... Personally, I don't know how people deal with it without a faith. I just, when you're in the lowest of low and you have nowhere to turn to, there was a couple of lows that I had in my life. But the only reason I was able to come out to, I believe it was because of my faith in Jesus Christ, because it was difficult, and everything worldly just didn't provide peace. And I tried psychologists. I tried all these different stuff. Never self-meditated. Thank God, because
never self-medicated.
Jeff Dubay was on one of my podcasts. He had his deal with addiction and stuff like that. And once you go down that road, you can't turn back. And so, but there was times in my life where it's just you're in your depth, and it was through faith and depending on other people and help you walk through it. Because my belief is that once something happens to us, and because of pride and because of fear, we pull away. And when we pull away, we become alone. And then the enemy comes and fills our mind with these lies. And we buy into these lies. Like, you're not good enough, you're better off, your family would be better off without you, you're a loser, you can't figure anything out. So these lies keep pounding you. And so, and so in that, we get separated. We separate ourselves from any sort of strength, and the strength is having wisdom surround you with other people. And so, kind of going through it, I learned that, to have other people help cut through those lies, and really they're half truths. It's filtered with some truths, and then help talk through this stuff with people around you, and then they can help you kind of feel or help you understand certain paths and kind of help cut through your lies.
And Corey, who are some of those people for you, and are they still in your life today?
Yeah, so Tom Lamphere was a chaplain for the Twins back when I went through that, and then I have, on Thursday I get together with some men, because the reality of it, men don't have connections. They're not truly connected, so I try to stay connected. Thursday mornings I have a small group with a couple guys.
Do you mean they may have friends, but they really don't have those connections they can be honest and vulnerable with?
No, because men are positioned a certain way in society, and so there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of insecurity in men, and so men have the feeling of inadequacy. It just is what it is.
You're just born with that?
Yeah, I don't know. It just through the course of time, there's this feeling of inadequacy. And so when people criticize men, and I see this a lot in youth sports, there's a fear of failure, a fear of insecurity, and there's this inadequacy, so they don't feel like they're worth it. So anytime you criticize, they get defensive and they get trying to show them like I'm right and you're wrong, and so they try to prove their adequacy. So, and I know it's a very general statement, but I can. It is
general, but it makes me want to hug my husband right now when you say that.
We can go, and that's if you start peeling it back on Linkley, that's what I really want to get into, is the interconnection of people, because we're not connecting. We're losing our ability to connect, and we have these certain personas that we play out, and we go back, like, it just seems like my world is falling apart around us, because I have a lot of friends who are going through divorces, and in my men's group I have one of the guys is Bob Leitenberg, who is a relationship genius. Like, the stuff that he talks about, and he talks, he just lays it out there about how, a man and a woman, and what each of a need, and each of our longings, and how we have these.
And that's longings. So ingrained. I mean, no matter how modernized society is, there are certain things that are just biological, physiological.
Yeah, and we all have these longings, and we have a longing to be loved. We have a longing to be respected. Woman has a longing to be loved. Man has a longing to be respected. And by criticizing a man, well, what are you doing to him? You're messaging that, you're inadequate. And so how do you talk to a man in a relationship in that way to help encourage and help build him up? Because at the end of the day, you want something. The wife wants something, and the way she's going about it is can she get it that way? And then on the flip side, with a man, with a woman, and it's like, how do you converse with a woman? And it's about, how do they feel loved? How are you present in the moment? How are you making eye contact? Are you distracted? Like, all these things that kind of tie into, and I believe through youth sports we can affect all that, because the way
get them while they're young.
Well, but the way you can message a certain way through the kids that the parents are open to hear.
That resonates.
Yeah, because you talk to you talk about a father-father relationship, a father-daughter relationship. Well, that same type of communication style works, husband-wife, wife or mother-son, mother-daughter. The way we communicate, it's the same type of relationship works, wife-husband. It's the same type of, and so I'm working on building that there. I'm not quite there with it where it's presentable, but
you're growing that, and at least you're sharing stories. People can find Linkley easily, linkley.com.
Yeah.
It's terrific. It's great and inspirational, Corey, to hear you've taken your past and some of the struggles of your past and your love for sport and baseball and turned it into something so positive moving forward. All right, we are here at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis, so I have to kind of wind us down on a bit of a lighter note with some real questions. Okay, Corey? The first question is, if you could be a steak, which steak would you be?
I'm not going to be a steak.
You're not going to be a steak.
Question.
Okay. All right, you're not going to be a steak. What about an entree? Would you be?
I'm not going to be. Nobody's going to eat me.
Okay.
You might want to change.
We are going to end that question there. Yeah. Who would you say, if you only could pick one, was your biggest mentor in life?
Oh, gosh. That is a tough one, because there's different phases and different, there's different phases at the point where you need different people, and it's a phase. And so there's phases. When I'm growing up, it's my parents, my mom and my dad, and then as I evolve now, all of a sudden I'm in college, and it's my college coach John Haar, and then I get into minor leagues. I got Bill Springman, who was one of my coaches at AAA, and then Jim Dwyer as a hitting coach early in the minor leagues. Then as I get into big leagues, I got Terry Steinbach, Brett Gates, Paul Molitor, Tom Kelly, and so this constantly evolves. And Tom Lamphere. Now I'm outside. Now I'm in my business career. Then there's guys like Marty Davis, some Planet Fitness guys.
The key, though, here is that you are open. Yeah. You're having these relationships, and it's men also supporting men, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
It's great to hear that. All right. Any final thoughts you have on Real Leaders with Roshini for our viewers and our listeners?
Well, one of the things is, my belief is, sports transcends all boundaries, and if we allow it to, I believe we need sports for a certain part of our life. I look at September 11th, for example. That was one thing that's been very was a impactful time in my career, and it's an impactful time for a lot of Americans at that time. Is September 11th happened, the country shut down for a week, and there was a lot of soul searching, a lot of stuff going on. What's going on? Why did this happen? Why did all this stuff happen? And I really struggled with it because I'm like, how can I play baseball anymore when 2,300 people died in the World Trade Center, and then all the lives that affected around us, and it just was earth-shattering for me. And then the question becomes, okay, where was God in this? Why would God allow this to happen? And kind of where I found peace in this is, you know what? I saw God, I saw Christ in the firemen running. As everybody was running down, they were running up to try to save people's lives. And then I found it in the hugs of the community. People embraced each other, and the love that was outpouring in the city of New York and in around the United States. And then as we kind of go into our first game. And I remember that going into that first game, and it was a weird feeling.
Kind of surreal.
Yeah. And so I go into that game, then we get into the game, and there was three hours during that where life outside of that baseball game didn't exist. And
we kind of needed it not to.
And exactly, we needed it. And I recognize that my team needed it, the fans in the Metrodome at that time needed it, the city of Minneapolis needed it, the state of Minnesota needed it, and the country, the United States of America, needed baseball to start. And so, we need sports to be that outlet. If we allow it to be that outlet where we can get this enthralled into the game and just enjoy it for what it is.
Very well said. The one, the only, Corey Koskie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much for your inspiration today.
All right,
Thanks for being with us on Real Leaders with Roshini. Till next time, keep it real.